All right, Barbie boys, Barbie girls around the world. The verdict is in. Your Barbie here went to go see Barbie. And you got Ben Shapiro dragging his little uptight ass to go see this movie. You have KFC Barstool weighing in on Barbie. Point is, everyone and their moms and their moms and their moms from the grave feel the need to have gone and seen Barbie and weigh in on this big cultural moment. But you know that this is the tried and true place to come that is going to give it to you straight, unlike the others here at Cancel Me Baby. So this is going to be my official Barbie reaction breakdown. You're going to want to see, you're going to want to send to your peeps, your wives, what have you, because like I said, I'm going to tell it 100, unlike all these fools. And I'm also going to, oddly enough, like I searched high and low. I did my dissertation and my thesis on this. So I looked at every piece that every mom blog and Time magazine, everyone, what they had to say. And I'm actually going to weigh in on three big kind of social points and buckets about this movie that I haven't seen anybody else talk about. So to give you a little bit of a preview, some of your burning questions answered. And yes, this obviously is going to have spoilers, okay? But honestly, if you're wondering, should I see it? I mean, sure, go see the Barbie movie. Is it one that I'm going to be writing home about? Absolutely not. Was it a complete and utter waste of 2 hours? Yes and no. So if you want this as your official guide, sure. If you don't want to see it, that works. But if you do want to see it, you may not want to watch this because the plot is going to be exposed like the Twitter files, bitch. Yes, that is a plug for my Matt Taibbi interview. It's going down. Can't wait. But until then, some little teasers of what your burning questions, what has kept you on the edges of your seats that you want to know. First of all, is this the left is painting this as some feminist masterpiece, and the right is painting this as a garbage dumpster fire of woke propaganda. Is it either of these things? No, not entirely. Another thing people are talking about, and I alluded to this in my last episode, is it a big male bash fest? No, not entirely. Lastly, is this an empowering movie? Not really. So with all that being said, let's get into it. And just to give you kind of an overview of the three topics that I'm going to be digging into a little bit more in depth. How many feel after watching this movie? No, but actually, I'm here for existential Barbie, but the way that they did it was, we'll get into it. I am actually existential Barbie. So where is a sliver of my royalties from this marketing ploy that aliens in space can't even get away from? I need to know. But we are going to be talking about objectification, power, and again, what I talked about in my last episode is social commentary and messaging in entertainment and media when it's too much, and further, particularly when it comes to women and men and female empowerment, and how this movie misses or doesn't, wait to see, misses the mark. I will say this as a little tease. Greta Gerwig, we get it. You hate the patriarchy, and I feel for Noah Baumbach. Like, Noah, are you okay? Is Greta taking out her disdain for the patriarchy on you in bed? I can only imagine the shenanigans that are going on in there. Are you okay? Because this movie makes it known that this lady hates the patriarchy. So, okay, with all that being said, so I'm going to tell you a little bit of my frame of mind, because you guys know I was really excited to go see this movie, and I did not go into it expecting it to be a woke brigade or expecting it to be a certain way or expecting not to like it. I went in wanting to have fun, so much so that I go to a 10:30 a.m. matinee and I'm surrounded basically by little girls in pink tutus, right? But it actually was very sweet because it reminded me of why I love entertainment and why I love film. It's like these big larger than life cinematic moments that bring people together. It's like the Harry Potter moment when all the Harry Potter geeks unite. We are showing up with our wands and we don't care who knows it, right? It's like that. So I look around the theater and I see everyone from little girls in their Barbie dresses to, women my age, to middle-aged women and older women, all in their pink and really excited. And it really was like, man, what a unifying moment. But then you watch the movie and it's going to shit on your dreams, just like this movie did mine. No, but so all that goes to say, it's really interesting because I was feeling this this little adrenaline and this excitement, and I'm in my chair and the movie's starting and it's Barbie, and I love the beginning of this movie, and I'm going to get to this in the end. I despise the end. I'm creating a burn book specifically for the ending of this movie. Despise. But I love the beginning, and I even feel, again, it feels very like big and cinematic and exciting and poppy and fun. And I feel myself feeling a little overwhelmed. Like I start to almost get a little teary-eyed, and I'm like, bitch, are you feeling some emotion in that plasticky Barbie heart? What is happening? So that just shows you I did not go in expecting to be critical of this movie. And it really did kind of bill itself to be this feel good, irreverent and fun film that was social commentary, but not taking itself too seriously. And I will say this movie takes itself seriously and it is very proud of itself. But before I get into critique, some things that I liked about it, right? I did like this. It was very irreverent. I like how it's very wink, wink, breaks the fourth wall, definitely makes fun of our culture and like woke extremes in some ways. And I really appreciated all of that. And I love like the camp. And everyone is saying this, right? Cinematically beautiful. This is, again, the one thing that people can somehow agree on. Absolutely cinematic, beautiful. Listen, like this is coming from a girl who was so committed to being in the 8th grade production of The Sound of Music that I literally had to tape my tits down to play one of the Von Trapp kids, okay? I wore a big black wig to be Cha-Cha in Grease. So I love a big over-the-top dance number, a la 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 Land. Like, I love all of that. So I loved all that. The costumes, like all that about this movie were great. And I feel, though, that really didn't maintain the whole time. I feel like that whole, all of it, the irreverent, the not taking itself too seriously, kind of slipped like a third of the way through. It lasted all of 5 minutes, guys. We got this. No, but so that's what I did like about it. So an overview of the plot before we get into these specific buckets of things I want to tackle. I will have you know that the movie starts and Helen Mirren is the narrator. And it starts and she says, Barbies were created in this world, so all problems of equal rights and feminism would be solved. So automatically I'm like, all right, it's a little much on the social commentary. Like, does the 8-year-old girl, with her Twizzlers next to me need to be hearing this, a dissertation about equality in the history of feminism, right? Like, probably not. But what was going on in the beginning was like so great that I didn't even care. I was like, all right, fine. And I'm going to get to the irony of what we end up seeing after this whole speech about, it's not a whole speech, whatever. It's like a line, but about, feminism and equal rights, like the irony of like what's on the contrary, what's happening on screen. But I love the beginning of the film because, again, very camp. It shows, Margot Robbie as the original Barbie and then all these other Barbies, like real life Barbies. And you see them as, Nobel winners and nurses and everything you can think of, right? And showing them in all of these, cops, and showing them in all these roles, and how in a time when women obviously didn't have this kind of autonomy, how Barbies had their own lives, their own houses, their own monies, their own dreams that they made come true. And that's when I was like, my little heart loved that. Like, loved the nostalgia, loved the imagery of it, loved the inspo of it. But not so fast, people. Okay, so the plot of the movie is Margot Robbie is what they call stereotypical Barbie, which, like, that's something in and of itself. And she starts to have human feelings of existentialism and death. So we come to learn that the Barbies are all connected to their human counterpart. Like, the toy is literally like if they're going in their kitchen, if they're having a slumber party, right? It's all tied to the kid or the person who owns that Barbie. So Barbie, Margot Robbie, starts taking on feelings of her human owner in the real world. There's Barbie world and then there's the real world. So basically, Barbie goes into the real world because this is how it, and also don't try to explain this movie and the plot points of this movie, because your brain will end up to be a plastic piece of toothpaste, like what Margot Robbie uses in this movie. Like nothing is to be made sense of, but she has to go into the real world, find the owner to figure out the answers and all this. And Ryan Gosling, again, sneaks in with her. Now, I will say what's so interesting about this is in the beginning of the movie, don't worry, we're going to have a whole thing on the male bashing or lack thereof. But in Barbie Land, the Barbies run everything. They are the government. They're the Supreme Court. They're the writers, the Nobel winners, the gardeners, the construction workers, literally everything. And the Kens, flipping it on its head, are like the props, right? Like they're the pretty boys just to kind of be there and chill and like dance with the Barbies and go surfing. So when Barbie goes into the real world, she's stunned because the real world is nothing of what Barbie's had set out to do, right? She comes to find that it's run by the patriarchy and by men, and women aren't in these leadership roles and they aren't as respected. And in turn, Ryan Gosling as the Ken feels all emboldened by this. And he goes back to Barbie world and tells all the Kens, and then they flip Barbie world on its head to have it run by the Kens, right? And that's basically, you can see where it goes from there. So that's the overall plot of this movie. So now, perfectly going off of that is the first topic of the day, which is the objectification station. So I will say I think like one of the scenes that stood out to me the most is when they first get, which of all places for a Barbie and a Ken to learn about humans in the real world, where do they go? That's really a fish out of water, but Los Angeles. So interesting creative choice there. But one of the scenes that I actually was like, this is very interesting, is they first they're in Los Angeles and they're rollerblading down Santa Monica and along the water and in Venice Beach. You see how people, and particularly men, again, we are hearing loud and clear how Greta Gerwig feels about this, but we see how men react to her versus the Ken, how they look at her, right? And how she feels versus how the Ken feels. So it's a lot of gawking. You know, we see construction workers catcalling her. One guy slaps her butt, all this, and she starts to say, you know, I'm feeling self-conscious. And she's a doll trying to make human thoughts, right? So they're a little bit disjointed. And, you know, she's like, I am feeling, you know, undertones of violence and all this. And he is feeling all like he's a stud, right? Like people see him with this hot Barbie and he's like, I feel respected, not ogled at, and not at all undertones of violence, right? So some commentary there. But the reason that this moment really struck me is because I thought it was actually a really interesting and not preachy way of, you know, really addressing that kind of micro daily interaction of men and women. Now, do I think it's a little bit exaggerated? Do I think all men act like this? No. But I thought that was interesting. And it also, this is kind of addresses, like for people who are saying this movie is male bashing, all this, I don't think that it's overtly male bashing. You know, I didn't even have a problem with the Kens being all, you know, props. Like I'm not taking it that seriously as people on the right who are like, oh, all the Kens are stupid and bigots and toxic and, you know, not manly men. It's like, I'm in on the joke. Like, I get it. I get that they're making a point, and I thought it was like campy and cute and funny. Like, I'm not taking it that seriously that the Kens were, you know, literal props. Like, they're not literally saying men are emasculated and are stupid, you know, airheads. Like, you know, lighten up a little bit. But I thought that this scene was an interesting, you know, sort of commentary. That's what I mean. It's like, I don't think that this movie had broad stroke, grand things of like, men suck, they're awful. I think it was more commentary on these like little, like I said, like microaggressions, so to speak. I don't want to say aggression, but these micro actions and feelings, so to speak, on the other end. So, you know, I talk about objectification on the show a lot because I think that it is an uncomfortable reality about men and women that we don't like to face, right? I've talked about Entourage, and Entourage is even now defending itself because people always come after it, especially now, for being so sexist and all this. And it really got me thinking because of what's the line, right? So for an example, I know you guys, one of the requests after Operation Sex Goddess Body was for me to get a little bit more personal on the show. So it made me think of a recent personal experience. So just to paint the picture for you, I've talked a little bit about my man on the show. Oh my God, vulnerability, someone kill me. So anyhow, he is what I would, and I'm not just saying this, the gold standard of what a man should be. Like, he's a total like alpha male and strong male, but he is the most empathetic toward women. He is my biggest cheerleader, fights for me, defends me. You know, he's in the same line of work, and he will put my needs and opportunities before his. Like, shout out to this man, you know who you are, right? But like, gold standard, like, arguably is more of a feminist than I am. Okay. So like, this paints the picture of how much of a solid man that this is. And it's so funny because, again, like I said, like, biggest advocate, biggest cheerleader, always wants me to be my best self. So we were at Hattie B's the other night. If you're in Nashville, you know, like, fried chicken place. And this group, and being the man he is, and being, you know, the respectable gentleman he was inside ordering and taking care of all that. And so I was outside holding down the table. So there was a group of guys kind of ogling at me to the point where it was starting to make me feel uncomfortable. Like, and I've talked about this before, but the idea of like getting attention and knowing what you're going to get if you dress a certain way and this and that, and almost like owning it, right? And like the feeling of walking into a room and owning it and the heads turning and that kind of power. But this is where like the dudes actually wouldn't stop, and to where I was actually starting to get pissed. Like, it was actually making me feel uncomfortable. So by the time my man came out, they had already left, but they were kind of lingering around on the street. Now, again, this is the first guy. He will like defend me. He'll be like, do you need me to go talk to these people? Like, he is that guy, but not in like a toxic, insecure way, but you know what I mean? And so I'm telling him this, and I'm like, you know, they're staring at me. I'm starting to feel really, I was wearing this like orange Barbie dress. You guys have seen it before. Yes, no bra. Like, you could see the nipples coming through a little bit, a little nip peep. And I'm telling him, I'm like, these guys are starting to make me feel uncomfortable. And his reaction is like, wow, you look super hot. Like, and I just thought, it made me think of this scene, because it's like, right, men, right? Like, the equalizer of all men. But really did make me, like, not to get too deep, but it really did make me think about this sort of primal thing in men and their instinct to objectify. And like, if you're taking it back to the caveman, like, you know, spread their seed and look at all the viable options. Whereas women and the cave women, like, shout out to you, we can be a little bit choosier and pickier, because we're looking for a solid, you know, mate who will give us that good seed and protect and care for us, right? So it's a totally different thing there, but it made me think, and even like where it goes the other way around, like we see Ken in the movie and he's shirtless and super hot, but we women, like, we're not like gawking at him the same way. It's just not the same. So all that got me thinking about, again, this primal thing of that men and women, that dynamic, and then that's going to happen. And it's like with men, it's like, that's okay. But like, there's a line of doing that and also being respectful, right? So like getting catcalled by a bunch of construction workers, so obnoxious, I can't stand. You know, it's okay, be respectful. So again, just a little side tangent there, but something to think about all this. And also later in the movie, again, this is where it sheds light and you can see into like what Greta Gerwig really thinks, because when the Kens take over Barbie Land, they somehow, which again, plot hole, how they manage to program all of these genius, intellectual, government leader, doctor Barbies, and they make all the Barbies their subservients, like basically they're decorative, helpful Hooters girls with like their tits out, and they abandoned their jobs and just serve the Kens. So again, you know, just playing into the stereotype, I obviously don't think that all men are like this. So this is what I mean. Is it overtly male bashing? I don't think so, but it has undertones like this, I feel, besides like the throws to the patriarchy all the time. But it's also worth noting that the creator of Barbie was a woman, because in this movie, it talks, again, stereotypical Barbie is Margot Robbie. It talks about you know, how Barbie set women back and wasn't feminist and gave them unrealistic body standards. You know, like the 12-year-old daughter goes on a whole rant about how Barbie is a fascist because of this. And so when it comes to all the objectification and how women look, let's not forget that the creator of Barbie was a goddamn woman who had been at Mattel for like 3 decades as the co-CEO. So also something to think about with that, right? Because it's like, even in this movie, we conveniently leave that out and love to point out how men are always going to objectify women in the most derogatory, extreme way possible. And that's not true. So all that goes to say, interesting point the movie made, interesting scene, but everything in balance. So what's not in balance, perfect segue to the next point, is power. So like I said, Greta Gerwig lets it be known that the patriarchy is not her friend. And also some rumblings you hear online, especially from the right, is like, oh, this movie says patriarchy every 5 seconds. And yes, like again, you know, the 9-year-old with her Snickers, she's moved on from the Twizzlers, and she's also turned 9 from 8 because this movie was that unnecessarily long, I will say. Didn't ask for this, right? Like you're pushing a little too hard. But also we hear patriarchy so much because Ryan Gosling learns what it is. So he's like repeating it and what have you. But, you know, again, this imbalance of power and how it has to all be so extreme. So it brings me back to the beginning, the very first line in the movie, where it opens again and says, you know, Barbie solves all the problems of feminism and equality. But what do we see? This was the first striking thing to me. But like I said, all Barbies ruling Barbie land, and men, the Kens, just basically being beach ball props. So I thought that was really interesting because I'm like, at the same time as you're talking about equality, it's so telling of our culture. It's like we have to stomp the other out. Like this is an equality. This is an equality. It's women completely running the show, men being their subservience. And then you see what happens when men take over. It's like in Barbie world, it's dysfunctional and toxic, and they run the show and the Barbies have no power. So it's like, again, no chill or middle ground to be had there. Like, let's not forget, feminism is equality of the sexes. It's not one superseding the other. So that's the first thing that screamed out to me. The other thing about power is that when the Barbies are once the Kens take over, and it's this whole plot where the Barbies have to deprogram each other so they get out of the Ken spell and go back to living their empowered boss lives, right? They go on this whole thing about how to win men over, and it is completely ridiculous. Like, I don't know what manifesto they actually stole from the 1950s that they took this literature from, but what? Literally, they're talking about basically how to win over and hypnotize the Ken. So yes, there's the universal and timeless idea of like men getting their ego stroked, right? But it's literally like you have to act helpless and confused and that you don't know anything, so they can come in and help you and act confused about money and, you know, just act in awe of them and everything they do. I don't know what kind of self-respecting guy is won over by a woman. When I say dumb shit, my boyfriend is like, Taylor, I know you didn't just say that. Like, he calls me out and he's like, you did not just ask me that right now. Like, what are we actually saying and what are we doing here? Like, what decade are you living in that's how men operate and how they think? Again, so telling of the commentary on men, right? It's like, you know, what they think. Again, I'm going to say it for the third time. I don't think it's overtly male bashing that men are so dysfunctional and bad, but it's, again, these kind of like micro things about how they operate and how you expect them to be. The other thing is that I thought was really interesting, right? All of this about power. So in the very end of the movie, obviously the Barbies restore power, like, shocking, I know, but Barbies restore the power of Barbie Land and they're all back in their roles and in their positions. And I thought it was so fascinating because there's this whole thing of like identity and Ryan Gosling's Ken finding his identity too, right? You know, from being the extreme of a plastic surfer dude to this like, you know, chest pounding patriarchy guy and like finding an in between. But one of the men asks the Supreme Court girl, you know, can I be on the court or something like that? And it's so interesting because she says, you know, I can't give you a high up position, but you can start at the bottom and then work your way up. And basically the narrator comes in and says something to the effect, like it flips it on its head, right? Like the reality of women getting a leg up later in the game and now having to work their way up in the last couple of years, right? And then there's a line though that says, you know, again, flipping this universe, like, you know, the Ken's given this lower position. And meanwhile, he's given this lower position. And like you would expect a woman to react like in our real world, he's like all excited. It's like, I'll take what I can get at the mercy of this woman, right? Which is again, commentary, because I do feel like there's truth in that. Like women taking what they can get often at the hands of leadership who are men, but and women, but you know what I mean? And so there's a line that says, you know, they got to start somewhere and work their way up. And maybe they'll be where women are in the real world today. So it's kind of this grim reality of, you know, that having to work their way up, but also insinuating that women still aren't truly equal to men. So I thought that was really fascinating because yet again, this is going to get to my final point here. I thought this movie was going to be a real, you know, feel good movie, especially in a time of so much confusion around identity and all of it. I thought it was going to be a real feel good, inspiring, like go out with a bang and like really see the Barbies and the Kens working together in leadership roles in true equality and in harmony and be like, yes, bitches, like that's what I'm talking about. And that's not what it was. So this movie chose to go with a more grim reality than an inspiring end. And wait till I tell you the end because I'm still not over it. I'm still so pissed than I was expecting. So there's that. But the last kind of note on Power is that it made me think that I think at the end of the day, it's like this movie likes to paint men. And I'm not even going to get into the subplot about Will Ferrell, who's in the real world, the CEO of Mattel, and how it's just run by a bunch of like idiotic suits. So there's commentary, right? That in and of itself of like entities in corporate America run by entitled men who like don't know anything and like just got these roles. But something about Power in that I really thought about it. And it's like, you know, women and men in power would pretty much act the same. Think about women that you know in power. They are not pussyfooting around and braiding each other's hair. Like whether you love her or hate her, Hillary Clinton, I'm petrified of the lady. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like I feel people in power will be just as ruthless. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like this movie peddles that kind of narrative of how men act a certain way in power. But the reality is women have as well and would. And if you go back in history, I'm not going to go down this path, but if you look at queens and how they treated their subservients and their people, like these bitches are cutthroat. So all that goes to say, I think power will get the best of you and it doesn't matter what gender you are. So lastly, going off of that is the grim reality that this movie decided to end on for whatever goddamn reason. Like just put me in a plastic box and make me Barbie itself and let me live away there, because if this is our future of what this movie paints, like I'm sad. So basically it ends with, so America Ferrera is the owner, plot twist, is the owner of Barbie, the Margot Robbie Barbie, right? Because it has you thinking it's America Ferrera's daughter, but it's actually grown America Ferrera. And so she goes off at the end to, hold on, let me close. The lights of Ruth, the creative Barbie, are shining on me right now to get me to probably speak louder because she probably agrees with me, but hold on a sec. Okay, sorry, I never shoot at this time of day. So we're really kind of like setting the mood. The candles are lit. The seance for Ruth to come back is happening. But so America Ferrera at the end, who also in the movie works at Mattel, goes on this whole depressing speech to the Barbies about how hard it is to be a woman in the modern world. Like she talks about how, you know, you have to be aggressive, but if you ask for what you want, you're a bitch, and how, you know, you have to have it all together, but also be vulnerable, and you want to be thin, but you can't say that out loud, and how you have to make up for men's bad mistakes, but also stroke their ego. Like it's this whole sob story on how hard it is to be a woman. And there's even a line that says, like, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, is this like overtly woke propaganda? No, it's just like cheesy, annoying, and didn't have to go this far. Like the point could have been made, in my opinion, in so much more effective of a way, which we're going to get to in the end. But there's a line that says, either you're brainwashed as a woman, i.e. like the bimbo, or you're weird and ugly, i.e. the feminist, and there's no in between. There's literally a line that says either you're brainwashed or you're weird and ugly, and there's no in between. And the Margot Robbie Barbie, or one of the Barbies, is like, yup, amen, sister. And it's like, what a message. Again, like, way to, like, I beg to differ, but okay, like, why are you reeling this message? Why do you even gotta like put this message out there? So again, I would have liked to see this big, flashy, bang, inspiring ending of the women in their real power and their positions and equality, and the men there and them working together and them holding their own. And, you know, call me naive, right? But I would have loved that. Even like I thought about it, right? Even when I left a movie like Wonder Woman, it's like I left feeling so empowered. I remember, and I told Patty Jenkins, the director, this when I interviewed her. It's like, I remember like just feeling the sense of like, damn, like, yeah, we can do it. Not this like sob story, you know, in mom jeans. Like, it's just shit is depressing. Sorry. Like, that's not what is going to inspire the masses. I remember leaving the theater. This is what I told Patty with my mom, and we were doing the little like W, you know, the X across our chest, like the Wonder Woman symbol, feeling all empowered. And that's why I don't feel like something like this is timeless. Like, I'm all for social commentary, you know, but this, because it goes so hard on these themes and on what's currently going on, it just doesn't feel like this timeless female empowerment story. Furthermore, because not only does she go on this whole sob story about how hard it is to be a woman, but America Ferrera's character pitches to Mattel ordinary Barbie, okay? An ordinary Barbie who has, you know, baby food on her clothes and who probably hasn't washed her hair in 3 days, but is going to her job and is just trying to get through the day. And of course, the executives at Mattel in the movie are like, this is going to sell off. This is going to fly off the shelves. And again, give us a little, like, this ending was a little too grim and bleak and it's quite frankly a boner killer for this Barbie, and sad for me. Again, this is why we want to see the superheroes, the Elle Woods, come in the end and just really shine and win the day and succeed. Like, that's what's going to inspire us, not ordinary Barbie in her Birkenstocks, okay? Which gets me to my next point, is that yes, if it's not clear enough, I feel like this movie could have made the point, but it's just way too much. It goes way too hard and it's just packed. They were trying to do way too much. They didn't know if they loved Barbie, hated Barbie, loved capitalism, hated capitalism, love men, hate men, wanted to inspire women, wanted to make women feel bad. Like, it's just, you guys were doing it's packed with way too much shit, right? But this is why I stand by what I said in my last episode based on all the reactions before even seeing this goddamn movie, which is, again, be a Legally Blonde, right? Legally Blonde is so timeless because it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's so entertaining. And yet we see, again, the subtleties of someone like an Elle Woods, who people think she's a bimbo because she's from Malibu and has big blonde hair and big boobs and is a sorority girl, and proves all of them wrong by going to Harvard and schooling their ass and winning this US televised case on her own. And like, again, we see it. We don't need to go on a whole thing about bashing the patriarchy and how women aren't treated fairly. Like, we see her being a badass in all of her power, right? But further, and this is the last point that was so important to me that I wanted to make. We see Elle Woods be in her power and she never compromises who she is. She wins this case in the end and proves everybody wrong in this hot pink dress, big blonde curls, her boobs, her cleavage, her heels. Like, she doesn't give a shit. She's owning all of it and her brains come out and they're popping, right? Like, that is the way to do it. One of the most striking and powerful images in this film was seeing the Black Nobel Peace Prize winning Barbie in this hot purple dress with these like big platform purple shoes, and it was everything. But what do they sadly do? I love when Hollywood proves me right, but I also hate it because it's like, why do you have to prove me right? This movie, yet again, proves the media's narrative that you simply cannot be both. You can't be the sexy hot girl and also smart, professional, successful, and taken seriously. That we can't be having this. Again, going so hard on everything, like the unrealistic Barbie beauty standards. And they make the Barbies, especially Margot Robbie, wait till I tell you the fucking ending, so basic. And it's like, this is how you're powerful. And I hate that. It's like, no, go out with a bang. I want to see Black Nobel winning Barbie in her hot purple outfit slaying. Like, thank you, mic drop. End it on that. But let me tell you about how they end this movie. So Margot Robbie ends up deciding she wants to take the journey of being human and all of the anxiety and depression, bleak, that comes with. So she ends up going into the real world. And after all of this power and, women being all of these roles that, let's be real, we're not really typically used to seeing them in, right? So it's nice and it could be empowering, but how do they end it? They end it with Margot Robbie in this like baggy blazer and saggy ass mom jeans and Birkenstocks going to the gynecologist. So that's your big bang message. What creative choice? I need a time machine. I need a portal to go back in time and have a word with whoever decided on this creative choice. I was visibly angry in the movie because this whole splash about female empowerment, and you're going to reduce her to going to the gynecologist in Birkenstocks nonetheless. No offense. Who gives a shit about going to the gynecologist? I want to see Barbie in the Supreme Court, as the president, as a cop, even as a construction worker. How interesting. As a dentist, a doctor, going to the gynecologist. I was genuinely insulted. Like, woke people who always get insulted, I feel your pain. I was genuinely so mad. It's like, what a bummer. Again, in a world of ordinary Birkenstock bitch Barbies, be an Elle Woods. You know who else did this brilliantly? And funny enough, they may be reading my thoughts because they've been coming up on my feed like crazy, but was the Spice Girls. Think about like when I was growing up and little girls when they were my age growing up, like that's what we needed to see. And it's like, this is what we're feeding these young girls, right? That they can only be taken seriously in lesbian Birkenstocks, that they, have to win over men by acting stupid and that they don't know things, and that, all these kinds of things. And that if men are in power, it's just dysfunctional and it can't really be in heart. Like, and this is the path we're on, and having to claw your way up. Like, it's just all around grim. And who did this brilliantly but the Spice Girls? And needing to feel some sense of empowerment again, because this movie like literally chipped away at my self-worth. I was like, God damn, like, is that how hard it is? I found myself after this movie like picking fights with my man. I was like, you did this. And I'm like, man, I guess the message really sunk in. But the Spice Girls, and you see them again in all forms, like sporty Spice, but then you see them like ginger and posh, like lifting her little skirt up. Not saying you gotta like smut yourselves out, but I'm saying it's like the most powerful image I love is Ginger Spice. She's wearing this like corset with her boobs propped up, and it says girl power on the corset. And she's wearing this like Statue of Liberty crown. And their whole mantra, right, was girl power. And they didn't have to like go in on men. They, in fact, a lot of their songs were about female camaraderie and power, but also their songs were about and loving on good men. And, their odes to them and how great good men are. And like, love and sex and all these things, right? It could be all of it. And that to me, it's like the Elle Woods thing. It's like was so cool and so powerful. And like that to me is female fucking power. I want to see the Wonder Womans kicking ass. I want to see Ginger Spice and the Spice Girls. I want to see Legally Blonde. I want to see superheroes. So I will say this. If inspiring and empowering women is what this movie set out to do, it made life, real plastic, and not fantastic. No, this is not a Barbie that I will be purchasing.